Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Friday Nights at GRAM. We want to thank Jade Pig Ventures, our sponsor each Friday night. And this evening is very special because we're welcoming back to Grand Rapids Ran Ortner, the winner of the 2009 Art Prize. Now, some people have had an opportunity to get to know Ran. We'd like this evening to give you that opportunity to get to know him a little bit better as a person and as an artist. And so I'm going to prompt him a little bit, let him speak his mind, but I have a few questions to get things rolling. So I think that when we're getting to know an artist, so many parents have young children that are creative, and you're looking for those first signs of interest in art. So perhaps you could tell us what is your first childhood encounter with art? What was the beginning for you?
I had always wanted to be involved with whatever my mom was doing, and she was always making something. There was never a lot of money about, so she was always crafting something. And when she'd paint, I want to be right there. And she's like, no, you're not old enough, you're not old enough, you're not old enough. And I was sure at 4 that I was fully capable. And I get this tug in the middle of the night, and I feel like I've been sleeping for at least 3 weeks at this point. It felt so late, and she drags me out of bed, and I go into the bathroom, which is all fresh white paint, and she dips my little hand in black paint and makes handprints around the light switch, around the faucets, around the toilet handle, washes my hand and puts me back in bed. I wake up the next morning and I'm like, good dream, nice.
So you had a creative mother.
Yes.
At age 5, your family moved to Alaska, where you lived until you were 18. What was life like there?
For me, it was the only life I knew, so it was conventional, but very unconventional, because my father didn't consider things, he would just do. And he has his pilot's license one day, piles us all in the airplane. It's a 1949 Cessna. We're flying to Alaska, and at some points the weather is so heavy that cars on the Alcan Highway are faster than we are, and are passing us. And he can't navigate, so we've got binoculars and we're reading road signs. We run out of fuel at a certain point and land on the gravel road and pull into a fuel station and get gas. And we end up buying 15 acres of land and building a log cabin. And there's a landing strip that we make right beside the cabin. And he's an engineer on the road system through Alaska. And so he flies to work every day.
So the notion of risk was familiar to you.
Yeah.
Well, in talking with you earlier, you shared with me that first bicycles and then motorcycles became a great passion for you. Tell us a little bit about that, the role that motorcycles played in your life.
The intensity of my father's personality was a lot to live with, and I found my freedom on my bicycle. And before I turned 2, I could actually ride a bicycle without training wheels. I had this facility, and my father was actually a national short track champion in 1963. So always motorcycles around. And by the time I'm like 8 or 9, I can ride my bicycle on the back wheel forever and, go in circles and keep going. And by the time I get my first mini bike at 12, I just had this amazing facility. And it's very much like you see, those 12-year-old Romanian girls on the uneven parallel bars in the Olympic show. It's like, wow, this kind of flight that they are engaged in. And I had that. And for me, I always think that I came out of dance first, because racing is interesting, because when you try to go faster, you think of this aggressiveness. You actually congest yourself and go slower. So you're always looking for elegance and flow. And in this, language drops away and you're just transported. And for me, it was a revelry that has always been my model of where I want to get back to. And so as a painter, I think in 25 or 30 years as a painter, I begin to have some of the facility that I had at 16 on a motorcycle.
But you had some injuries. You were a risk taker as well. And suffered the consequences.
That's a matter of when, not if, in that particular field. And so very much Icarus, you fall from grace, and you're in the orthopedic ward next to these guys that have been in bar fights, and you're like, why are we doing this to ourselves again, And I spoke to an artist, and he said, it's not the motorcycle having the experience, you're having this experience. And I'm like, well, that's kind of heavy, a little deep for me, but I saw what he was saying, and that potentially I could have this kind of engagement in other areas of life. And that's, with that intensity, I'm moved to painting at age 20. I'd had yet another pretty extensive knee operation, and that gave me time to really focus.
So by the time you were in your 20s, you were back in California. Your family relocated.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about what prompted you then in your 20s to turn to art. What was the initial inspiration? What directed you on that path?
I did not have a formal arts education, so my aesthetics is influenced by the very rural kind of homestead quality of my mother, and then kind of the Disneyland eye candy of Southern California. And there was a sidewalk show in Santa Barbara. We'd relocated to Santa Barbara area, and my mother used to paint for the sidewalk show. She had long red hair down to her waist and roller skates, and she had us 3 kids by the time she was 21. And so she was a very young, kind of hot mom, and she was selling her paintings down there, and I thought, that's kind of nice. You only need one eye and one arm, and you can do this thing. And so I liked those odds, so I was picked painting as the safe choice. Little did I know, not terribly safe.
But by your late 20s, you were a successful painter. You were selling works and well-established.
Yeah, I was doing work that I was a young man, as I reflect back, looking for approval. I was looking for people to say, well done, and to give me some money. And that was happening. And by the time I'm like 28, 29, I'm married to an English fashion model. I have a home in La Jolla that has ocean views out the back, and she's the director of the gallery. I work with Hanson Galleries, and she takes that gallery from doing $1.5 million a year to doing $3 million. So she's a very capable business person. And we've got this little power life going, and I just realized that I've done all this to be the antithesis of my father and have no idea who I am or what I want. And I just put the brakes on it, just an emotional kind of coming to terms with, or the big question mark, what is this? Who am I?
So at age 29, you really had a major life crisis.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you tell us what changes took place? And
I could see in this kind of the tourist art world that I was in, there was a potential to make tremendous money through inkjet prints. They call them clichés. They sell them for very inflated prices. And I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the disquiet in the artists that I see doing this. And I read the literature, and I see they're not in any institutions. They're not really making their way in the real art world. And then I'm suspicious of the real art world. These are all these intellectuals that are, know what is and what isn't. It's a lot of people that can't draw, and it's some personal currency among the wealthy. What are they up to, And with my, Alaska kind of background, it's like, those intellectuals and all that civilized, buffoonery that they're up to. Can't have that. And then I start reading, which was my big mistake.
And so you lived in isolation. You kind of cut yourself off from everyone for a while and immersed yourself in reading and thinking.
Yeah.
And then the following year, made a complete break and moved to New York. Changed your life completely.
Yeah.
And began to visit museums, I understand, which had a profound effect on you.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us about museums and their effect.
As it was leaking into me through my 20s, because obviously I'm interested. I'm looking at pre-Raphaelites. I'm looking at highly developed luminous work. I'm looking at the Hudson River School of Luminous American Painters. And so I'm building my capacity as a technician, but I want these things that are a bit on the glitzy side. I'm looking for these kind of charismatic techniques. And as I